Welcome to the Mike and Alison After Hours podcast with your hosts, mshelah and Alison Haas, talking business with real business owners in the Mid-Atlantic region. Today's episode is sponsored by Advantage Industries. When you need business technology, get Advantage Industries to protect and promote your business. To learn more, go to www.getadvantage.com and schedule your first meeting to see if you qualify for a free network scan.
Good morning, everyone. Here's a surprise for you. It's Allison's voice, not Mike's. That would be interesting, right? So Mike normally leads us off, the Mike and Alison After Hours show, but we're trying to get me more involved instead of just having a background jab here and there to share. So I am driving the bus this morning, as we like to call it. So welcome. Thank you, everybody, for listening, viewing. You'll see that Mike's background is a little bit different. It's an awesome library. And I am quite distracted trying to find the one book I lent him that we can't figure out what it is. So
we're never going to sort that out, Alison.
Present.
We're not.
Oh my God. So Mike, how are you?
I am absolutely wonderful today. How are you?
I am great. I am slowly nursing a kind of second coffee, so I'm going to have to be careful of that so I don't talk too quickly for our lovely guest that we have, and I'll introduce in a moment here. But thank you, everyone, for listening. If you've been following along, we're starting to change the lineup a little bit into different types of leaders in our community. And as you know, you can get a little bit of everything from every episode. Professionally, we appeal to the salespeople in the world, the business leaders. What is it like to be in that chair? And then we always often go into the emotional, mental, spiritual realm of the world, because that's what it is to be human, right? So today will be no different. With us, we have Terri Nardslico. She is the president of CRG Companies, and I have her bio here in front of us, but we're excited to talk. I'm excited too, because Terri, we know that you're heavily involved in a lot of nonprofit organizations, one of which is for addiction treatment and transitional housing for veterans. And so just about me, I'm in recovery myself, and I wrote a book about my story. And so whenever I see people that are invested in the betterment of people in addiction, it speaks immediately to my heart. So, but you used to be a respiratory therapist in pediatric critical care and adult critical care, which is amazing, before you moved to Myrtle Beach in 2014. And now you are part owner of CRG, and you build houses, right? And you're establishing a land development company. So just a little bit different than critical care. And so we're excited to learn about that. And so I'm going to let Mike get us started with the who, what, why, when, how version of the show. We'll pass the baton to me. And I'm sure I'm forgetting to tell you all the different platforms that our podcast is on. So maybe Mike will fill that in at the end of the show here. But like I said, I'm driving the bus, so it's going to be a little bit different. So Terri, welcome to our podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
You got it, Mike.
All right, Alison, thank you so much. And Terri, thank you, yes, for being on Mike and Alison After Hours. And this segment, who, what, where, when, why, how, this is your opportunity to tell us about you as the person, your company, the nonprofit work that you do. We had one person tell us he was a passionate dog rescuer a few episodes back. So, what makes Terri and your company, and who is your client, and where do you do your work? So I'm going to just start there for you, Terri, and who, what, where, when, why, how.
Oh gosh, really? Okay. What makes Terri? That's a very interesting question. So as a respiratory therapist for 20 years, mostly pediatrics, but also adult ICU and heart surgeries and things like that. That was a very different kind of work, really stressful. So one of the things I did kind of as a hobby is I would flip houses, fix them up, sell them to people. I was kind of good at it. It wasn't what supported me, but it was a good thing to do. So when I was able to leave respiratory, and my husband and I were in a position where we could do some actual building, we started a development company, and we partnered with a guy who was remodeling a house for us. And it turned out that I really had kind of a knack for it, and I liked it. And he really wanted a partner and then wanted to go on to do some other things. So I kind of started doing it, and I was like, this is really good. We were
What,
doing.
you mean you didn't come up with a strategic plan to do this? It just sort of happened?
Well, yeah, sort of. Yeah. My husband's a very business minded, though. He had run a software engineering company for over a better of 20 years. And he had recently sold that company to Lockheed Martin. And so my husband was I'm more of the touchy-feely person, and my husband's more of the read the contract 200 time person. So
Important dynamic.
Yeah, from working in an emergency situation, I'm kind of like take the best 5 points and do something. My husband is still researching whether that's going to occur or not. But he was really good at getting it set up and helping me get the people in place and helped a lot with that. I had some construction background. I went and took courses, some architectural courses, had a real interest in that. But as it developed, we decided we wanted to do a neighborhood. And we were doing custom homes for people. They were big beach houses. And I wanted to be able to do something that had the same kind of quality that I could see in my custom beach houses that people were doing. And there's an architect called Suzanne Shizenka, who I believe she's out of Minnesota, but she had written a thing called the Not So Big House, but putting more quality things into the house. So when she did that, I had read all of her information, and I thought, well, maybe I can do this. I can create this. I can make the houses have the same feeling and comfort, and not these big sort of McMansions with the sheetrock everywhere and no details in them like they were in the 70s or 80s before we kind of went to the McMansion houses. So as it worked out, I vetted a lot of the material on my own beach house that I was remodeling that had been built in the 70s. And when I did that, I found some land and we went through the development process, and we have a small neighborhood. It's like 211 houses. Total. It'll be some multifamily and about 180 single family. So it's a real, it's sort of a boutique neighborhood, I would say. But as it turns out, it's doing really well. People like it. They appreciate it. It's a little bit smaller in size for what you get, but we have things like hurricane impact windows and spray foam insulation and 50-year roofs. And so these houses are walking distance to the ocean, and they're super solid. So people really enjoy it. Part of the housing thing was how I got involved in addiction. Is I had several family members affected by addiction, and including I have an adult daughter. And one of the things that is kind of, seeing it up front is there were very few treatment programs, but very few housing options. I mean, very few places for these people to live. And I think part of being able to go through recovery, if you have addiction problems, is having shelter. You need shelter. And when I first moved to Myrtle Beach, I realized that a lot of the homeless people they lived near the ocean, and it was because we had fresh water at every public access. So if you go to most big cities nowadays, you don't see any fresh water. So it was kind of a natural thing. I was involved in housing, and I got into working in just housing in every area. Now, because I'm a small builder, it's not really possible for me to, say, compete with a national builder on a price point that's for everyone. So my homes are more of that middle price range for people. A lot of times it's their second home and things like that. but I can, from a charity point of view, work to help facilitate getting housing and buildings and stuff for people who have addictions and just homeless people in general. But a lot of those people happen to have mental health and addiction problems, which we in this country apparently have dropped the ball on that. That could be a very long episode. I really appreciate the chance to get to build the houses, and most of the people I deal with are professional people, and they've done quite well with themselves and things are well, but it allows me the opportunity to also work in the lower income housing with Habitat for Humanity, transitional housing, that kind of thing, to help with the wellness and all of that. So I'm, it's a second act for me. I'll be 60 years old this year. So it's, my children are grown and I have, grandchildren as well. So this is kind of a nice thing to do. And it's a lot of fun. And I have a lot of young people who work for me that are just really passionate about what they do and really good at it. So it works out really well.
Terri, I absolutely love that for so many reasons. Alison and I started doing this podcast just over a year ago, and we've done almost 30 episodes now. And there's this recurring theme around the business owners that we talk to is, one, they tend to love what they do. And second, they almost always have some passionate project that they have catalyzed into something incredible like what you just described. Last episode, we had on a former colonel who is also a doctor who provides therapy dogs for veterans.
Yeah.
And so, and he came out of retirement to do that. So it's not something that he was looking for, but now he's driving this incredible engine. And it sounds to me like you're driving an incredible engine. And so from house flipper to small community, only a couple hundred homes.
I know. I'm like, is that small? I don't think that's small.
And
well, yeah, comparative to like, I don't know, D.R. Horton or Ryan Homes, places like that, they build like 4,000 houses.
Powerful perspective. So before I hand you off to Alison to go through the leadership segment of the show, how do people get in touch with you, whether they want to donate to the foundation that you've started or they want to buy one of these super awesome houses that are walking distance from the beach near Myrtle?
Well, we have the neighborhood that we're building, of course, is livingdunes.net, and you can go online and see that. As far as CRG homes, they can go online and look us up as well, and it's CRG homes. And we do real estate, we do design, we build custom houses for people as well, and a lot of oceanfront houses, anything to do sort of coastal. We're pretty good at that. And then as far as the projects that I'm working with, there's a East Carolina Housing Organization, or ECHO, ECHO, in capitals, is run by a gentleman named Joey Smoke. He is their director, and they do all things housing. Oops, you kind of cut off. Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
No, you're here.
Okay. I can't see you anymore, but that's okay.
Oh.
It'll probably come back here in a minute. But the East Carolina Housing is, they run our veterans program, which is transitional housing for veterans, as well as the wellness programs and addiction services. They have quite a few people that work for them that are in recovery. And those people, have just familiar with all things addiction and addiction related. And it's been extremely helpful to me to see the side of recovery where there are people who do recover and they get better, and to try to be implementing that and helping that. So you can go to ECHO as an organization online, and all of their services are there, and certainly donate to them anytime. They're a 501c3, and they just do amazing things in Myrtle Beach as a community itself.
Fantastic. We'll make sure all of that is in the show notes. Alison, take it away on leadership segment.
Terri, I don't know where to go because I'm what you just said about seeing that recovery is possible long term.
Yeah,
I'm not going to cry on our podcast.
that's okay.
It's so interesting because as a sober person, and I have been half my life, so a long time. And I don't want to say I take it for granted. It's just what I do. It is an extension of me. I wake up and that's me now. And I have a lot of people in my life who share that commitment, and I also have people who don't. And
Right.
Mike and I were talking before the show about some personal things, and I think I needed to hear you say that this morning, that people do get better and stay that way, because it's just who I am. So I don't even relate almost sometimes when I don't see it working and people that I care about, and I know there's nothing I can personally do about it besides be an example. I forget that maybe one day that will change for them. So selfishly, thank you for saying.
That's easy to forget. I know I have a grown daughter who has struggled for about 20 years now. And we are in sort of, I call it the wash, rinse, repeat cycle. And so I think she wants it, but it just hasn't, really clicked for her. She's currently back in recovery now. But when I got involved with ECHO as an organization, and I got involved with Mr. Smoke, he had been in long-term recovery, and I got to see that, it's not all doom and gloom for everybody, and it can happen. I would love to be able to do things to make it easier for people for it to happen. Sometimes I think there are extreme barriers to people getting into treatment. Some of it's the stigma of it. Some people ask me, they say, well, why do you tell people, your daughter's a drug addict? And I'm like, well, because I love my daughter, but it's a disease, it's a problem. And, we got a lot of things to worry about, but this is a really big one. We've lost a lot of people to this in recent times, and I think we kind of dropped the ball, especially with opioid addiction, because that happens to be my daughter's problem. I lost a brother a couple of years ago who also suffered from addiction. So I guess I'm getting over, that's part of my recovery, is learning that I cannot control everything. So I've learned that about politics in general. I cannot control the national stage. If they would just listen to me, I'm sure everything would be nice. But since they're not going to, I try to do things locally that I feel like I can affect change. Myrtle Beach is a very small town. We probably have 40,000 permanent residents. So I can do things in this community where I can see improvement. The community I'm building, I can see the community of the people there, and sort of the front porch atmosphere. And I ran into so many people who were buying those second homes, who are well-to-do people that have had the same struggle I have with their children. And they're like, gosh, I didn't know anybody knew this or anybody had these options. So I think when you start talking about home and family and those kind of things that affect people, I encourage people to speak out. It's not, I'm not embarrassed of my daughter. I love my daughter. I just want it to be better for everybody. And even though it may not fix her, it will go a long way eventually to help others. And, she's gotten 20 years into this, and some people don't necessarily get through it, but other people do. And if they can see those examples, I think it'll be good.
Yeah, and I think the buzzword is stigma. There's a stigma around what it looks like, right? It doesn't look like me. It doesn't look like you, right? And the reality is it looks like everybody. And so
Yep.
I think that's also a great segue back to the business owner, right?
Yep.
Like the stigma that a business owner looks a certain way, has a certain background. Maybe it's in their blood or it came up through their family. And that is not your story, as we just witnessed. So
absolutely not.
Talk to us about what that transition from critical care nurse to business owner was like, and then employing people, because that's a feat in and of itself.
Yeah, that's really different for me. So yeah, I was a single mom and went into respiratory therapy. It was a great profession. I always had a job. It was good. I loved it. I enjoyed helping people. I liked doing it. A good portion of the time I worked in pediatrics, and that was extremely rewarding for me. But as being a single mom has its own sort of business challenges. So for about 13 years, I did that. And this was, the housing was more of a hobby and the things I liked. And then of course, as the drug thing developed, it became a crisis to me. It was something I didn't know. It was like, well, how do I tackle this? How do I help fix it? And that's a problem with medicine. You kind of are wanting to fix something. You're always like, I need to fix this. If I can fix it, this will be great. And I eventually got to, now that I don't see so much about the fixing, but it was difficult when I first got in with the group, when I decided I'm going to do this, and learning how to not want to help them do everything. I've got these great people that work for me that are super, they're young, they've got all the technology, super talented. I'm a little technology challenged, so I'm kind of like, okay, I could do CPR, maybe save your life, but I
Can't
can't
do it on the computer though.
My husband makes fun of me. So it's but I do have all these great people, and I start thinking, I'm like, oh, well, let me help you do it. And then sometimes that makes them feel like I'm not trusting them to do it. My husband says, you got to let them do it. So it's hard for me sometimes to do that, because when I worked as a therapist, I was part of the team. I wasn't the head of the team. I was part of the team, and I enjoyed being on the team. And, sometimes I'm like, gosh, they don't want me on their team. They don't even like me, so I'm not as good at that, but I'm getting better, and they are becoming quite successful at it. We've got, I think, I'm getting really good at getting the right people in the right places and letting them play to their strengths. And, some of the people I have working for me, I mean, it just amazes me how great, just how really talented they are and smart they are. And it's like, if you've got the team working well, it's just, I really don't have to do that much anymore.
Bingo moment. Thank you.
Yes. So it's like, I don't have to be all things to all people. And that's, and I can let these people be the best they can be, so it's almost it feels like a really accomplishment to see them succeed so well, and to create something that's profitable and that we're doing well. And even though we had this terrible setback of COVID, and it's of course lucky for us, everyone was fleeing the large cities,
Right.
So we sold more houses during COVID. Of course, now we have to build them, but it was really good for us, because people wanted to they realized they could work from home and they could be at the beach, and a lot of people needed that for their mental health. And so they moved here. So it's like, oh, this is super. So it fascinates me how, learning how to get people to sort of shine in their own thing. Just like I have some strengths, but I've also got some weaknesses. So it's nice to see how it's all coming together. It's getting really, much more.
What I'm hearing from you is your humanness, right? As a leader, you're standing shoulder to shoulder with your team, which we've talked about a lot. And with a lot of our guests, you have to let people have the opportunity to step into a role. And that leads to empowerment, which leads to engagement, which leads to a better bottom line, right?
Yeah, so I think and I think if the people are happy and they're, things are difficult right now. I think just the times in general, there's so much news, so much just so many things happening that I think that it's a holistic approach to it. I mean, I certainly there are charities which I'm involved in heavily, and then this is a business, and we want the business to do well and be profitable. But part of the profit is the people too, that they enjoy what they're doing, that they feel like they're part of something that's important. I always felt that when I worked with the children and even adults, that I was doing something that was valuable. And I think, especially during this past 2 years, people seeing that there's extreme value in a lot of things people do, and people recognizing the value those people put in, so I think maybe we're getting a little more humanity everywhere, or I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. A little less super corporate and a little more little corporate, little mini people, So,
and I mean, coming from the HR space, we say people are your greatest asset. So I think that's a great bookend, right, to the leadership business aspect. People are your greatest asset, and when they feel that they are, they do produce value. They feel valuable, and people that feel valuable and as you said, happy when they come to work, just produce more and then want to come to work, right? So
they do.
thank you.
And I watched my husband do this with a business he built from his basement. He was a software engineer. He was a disabled veteran coming out of the Navy. He built a company from the ground up that it ended up being one of the largest, if not the largest provider of healthcare IT to the federal government for the VA. And we do a lot of veterans causes things because of both my husband and my son are both disabled vets. And the watching him do it and competing in that really big space with Booz Allen and HP and all of that, and seeing that, it's like, and it was really a culture he built. His company had a culture, the people, the work, they enjoyed being there, and that's kind of what we try to emulate with everything we do if we can. And so that's very important.
Absolutely, culture by design. Mike, any thoughts before I unfortunately let Terri go? We could talk to you all day about a lot of different things.
Yeah, well, that would be kind. Yeah.
I guess my parting thought is thank you for your incredible transparency about who you are as a person and how that has translated into the success of your business. And hey, who doesn't want to live in Myrtle Beach? What a great little town.
I'm like, damn, I wrote your website down. I'm looking that up as soon as we're done.
Thank you so much, Terri.
It is, and I appreciate it very much, you guys. So if you need anything else from me, just let me know. I appreciate it.
Terri.
We will.
You.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Hello.
What'd you think?
I just loved that she is a person who very much has had her own personal obstacles to overcome. By the way, single mom, trying to raise kids, has a child with an addiction, lost a loved one to addiction, and she's trying to do something. And the moment that stuck out to me was, we can't get the president to do what we think is best for the country, but we can make an impact on a community right here. And if more people took that attitude, how much better off would we be as a country? If it's, you know what, I'm just going to fix this little space, these 100, 200, 300 people. I'm going to make an impact here.
Yeah.
And then if you did that, and then the next person. So yeah, great moments for me.
Well, and turning her, what we could all say is a misfortune, right, and trauma into an asset and a reason to put some seeds in the ground and do better, right? Instead of saying, poor me, why me, this happened to me, but maybe this happened for me and for the betterment of others. So I think that's really important, because I know, like, back to the word stigma, so often we just assume people have it together because, and then we have our own story that we create, as opposed to they've been through some hard stuff. And the hard stuff continues, but we can put our shoes on and lace them up and get to work anyway, and get out of that. And addiction is grossly misunderstood, and I don't want to turn it into a podcast about that, but really it could just be a mindset, right? Because it is centered in the mind. There's a physical component, but there is enormous emotional, mental, spiritual component. And that's the part that is, for me, hardest to get over. Because once you put the physical substance down, if you don't change your barometer, your mental barometer, you will pick that physical substance back up, or a different one, to try and combat your mental state. And so maybe you don't use drugs or drink alcohol or food or whatever, but you have this mental chatter that's incessant, that's like pinning you down on the floor every day, preventing you from being your best self at work and in your life. Like, she's a great shining example of how to turn that around.
Yeah, and everything that you just said is so incredibly applicable to the business world, because I have my story, I have my challenges. You have your story, you have your challenges. Terri has her story, she has her challenges. And we are all making our way through life. Terri has her professional goals, you have your professional goals, I have my professional goals. And as we were talking before the show, do we sometimes get kicked in the teeth and knocked over, and we just want to cry, we just want to scream, we want someone to yell at, we want to vent? And that's part of the process, and knowing how to do that without harming others, that's an evolution. And I it, if you've listened to any of our episodes, I have a teenage son with autism, and that's the community that I spend a lot of my time impacting. For those of you that don't have a child with autism, which is the majority of you, it sucks. And I tell people all the time, I love my son, I hate his autism.
Yes.
Because of just the crazy things in the moment that it can impact an otherwise normal day. But you know what? You can tell that story because of the things that are in your tapestry and the texture of your life, and you get through them. And every person listening and watching the show can say and do the same thing. Because just because you're not experiencing my story doesn't invalidate your story or make your story more important. It's your story. And we've all had bad things to varying degrees happen to us.
Yeah.
But we get up, we put our pants on, and we go to work. And that's if there's one thing I want to impart to our audience is, the next time you're having a disagreement with a coworker, stop for a second and think, is there something else that's impacting them, and that's why they're acting this way? Because 99 out of 100 times the answer is yes. Very rarely is someone just being a jerk. There's usually a catalyst. Now, how they're not handling it the right way. So please go read How to Work with Jerks from our last guest, Eric. But that's the crux of great leadership, right?
Yeah, and what I'm hearing from you and what I heard from Terri and what I think a lot of our guests have woven into their business story is that at the end of the day, it's not the check you're able to cash or the things you're able to buy. It's the impact you're able to have on people and community And being useful and of service is how I like to articulate that, right? Like like you said, we all have professional goals. I have mine. They are monetary, they're dollarized, there's numbers attached. But at the end of the day, I feel my best when I was useful and present and a genuine resource to my peers, right? To my prospects, to my clients, and know that I was a genuinely good human. And I think the more we all have that as our leading thought and inspiration, then the dollars just come, the stuff just comes. That's at least been my experience. When I put the stuff first and the dollars first, I shortcut, I get desperate and urgent and irritated. But when I focus on the quality of my impact and usefulness and service to others, I walk away feeling better. And then the reward is that much sweeter because I did a good job along the way. Right. So I really heard that from Terri this morning and what you just shared. And I think that for me, that's my prevailing want, right? Especially as people suffer around us, right? I'm like, screw the money, screw the stuff. Like I just want to be a good human.
Yeah, and I can't remember if I mentioned this in one of our previous episodes or not, but I know I've at least passingly mentioned it to you that I'm reading this book, Lynchpin, by Seth Godin, and it feels like the most important book that I've read in a really long time. Because, and as you can see, I read a lot. But this one really touched me because he talks about what is your art. So every person has something artistic in them. And when you can leverage that into your job, then you become a linchpin. But unfortunately, the business world has industrialized almost everything. Salespeople have metrics and KPIs, and well, you have to measure that. And I've always pushed back on that and said, you know, my response whenever somebody has given me that, I'm like, okay, show me. What do you mean? Show me. You're telling me that works. Show me an example where it worked. You should have a ton of them, right? Oh, you don't. Oh, okay. So it's a little bit less about that. And it's a little bit more about the human interaction than the KPIs. Now, some people, they just have to have that box, right? They have to have that framework. You and I have talked about this, that as salespeople, we're a little more comfortable standing in the middle of the hurricane and watching the houses and the debris blow around us. And we're kind of okay in that chaos. But there's a specific segment of the business world that just they can't function that way. So they have to build these boxes. So to a certain extent, it's a game you have to play because you have to understand who that other person is you're working with, which goes to culture. And I know as an HR professional, you talk to your clients about culture all the time.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I mean, that's the framework, right? And that's why, culture by design, you create it, right? And I think those boxes are still important, right? Like I know that I do try to adhere to some metrics and they keep me honest, right? Like the numbers
Have a
don't lie.
purpose.
Yes, exactly. But to grind myself to that number or else, right? It's like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. And then it just doesn't, it keeps me honest. It helps me gauge where I'm at relative to where I'm supposed to be for my tenure. But it's also not a defining, nail in the coffin. I'm a good or bad salesperson because, right?
Yeah.
But no, anyway, this episode, like I said, I'm not going to cry on the podcast. Not that there's anything wrong with crying, but I'm like, damn it, it's too early. Like I just, that was a powerful episode for me, Mike, for a lot of reasons. And every guest we have, it bleeds into that emotional, spiritual, because we're all just humans, right? The 30 episodes we've done, I just think that's all this all is, right? Human to human interactions. And it is powerful. People helping people. It's powerful stuff, right?
Yeah. And hopefully people understand why we do that so much. You and I are huge book fans because we were seeing things in the business space going, that's not right. But you would be told from on high, well, that's how you do it. And as reasonably intelligent human beings, we go, well, that's really dumb. We shouldn't do that. And we started reading all these books and going, wow, what do you know? There's a bunch of people out there that agree with me. People that have made lots of money, writing and publishing really successful books.
Yep.
And I had a very interesting interaction with my engineer, Russell, who he is my partner in crime. He and I do all of our sales meetings together. And Russell runs our customer account management team. So specifically, once I have sold a deal, he and his team support the customer going forward. They meet with them quarterly. They send them weekly and monthly reports. They communicate with the customer and keep them engaged. And I think I mentioned this in the last episode. We've had this massive uptick in our existing customers getting letters from their cybersecurity insurance companies saying, hey, you need to fill out this questionnaire in order to renew your insurance, or your rate's going to go up or worse. And we developed a new tool set that we built off of a strategic platform that does really good things for all of our customers. And we're now working to upgrade all of our customers onto this platform. And a longtime customer came to Russell and had a questionnaire and said, well, I just want to do the things that are in the questionnaire. I don't want to do all the things that you guys are planning to implement. Now, he's doing this in the interest of saving money, which I can understand. And Russell said, well, how do I push back on that? And I said, well, my first thought is, do you want to check a box, or do you want to do what's best for your company? As if you want to check a box, then what you've asked for makes a lot of sense. But you've never struck me as someone that just checks a box. You've always struck me as somebody that does the right thing for their company. And I'm finding more and more that when I talk to business owners, I have to push back. And as a salesperson, you have the right to do that. You have to be respectful about it.
Right.
But you have to say, that's not the right thing to do here. Maybe it saves you money, but that's not the right thing to do. And I'm sure in HR, you experience that a lot as well.
Yeah, I try not to be black or white at all, and just qualify what I heard and repeat it back, maybe in a way that paints a bigger picture, like what's the consequence of doing the same or not investing and not changing. But yeah, really, it's a conversation and it's education, right? And challenging people to think differently, and try something different. I just finished Sales EQ again, and
My favorite.
he talked about how change is just the hardest thing as a human being to embrace. And even if what you're doing is terrible and you know it's terrible and it's sucking you dry and your vendors aren't treating you well, the idea and thought of changing is sometimes just too overwhelming, right? And so it's reframing the conversation and slowly painting the future picture so that change isn't as scary. And I think Terri did a great job of showing us how to embrace change, right? I mean, going from a nurse to a business owner and philanthropist, I think is huge. So Mike, any parting thoughts on today? And I'm, like I said, you may have to plant the seeds for the audience of where everything is, because I dropped the ball on the advertisement aspect of this podcast. But hey, I got it going.
No worries. Yeah. So to our listening and viewing audience, thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're seeing this, you're on YouTube. So awesome. Please subscribe to the channel. Please drop a comment, because that's how you win one of our great giveaways. We'll be announcing a new giveaway in just a couple of weeks. And if you are listening, well, guess what? We're everywhere. You can ask Amazon Alexa to play the show. You will find us on Audible. We are on Spotify. We are on iTunes. We are on Stitcher. We are on Podbean. You name it, you can find us and listen to us in the car, or while you're jogging or cleaning the toilet, or however you enjoy your podcast experience.
See, I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening to the Mike and Alison After Hours show. People helping people. It's powerful stuff.
Indeed.
Thank you for joining Mike and Alison After Hours. Tune in next time for another great business owner sharing valuable industry ideas. Want to be a guest on our show? Contact us at answers@getadvantage.com.